Everyone for joining us today. My name is Alex DeLuca, and I'm very excited to bring you this Expert Insights webinar, Learning from Hurricane Sandy, Best Practices for Mass Notification and Weather Emergencies. Going over the agenda for today, Maureen Dettori will start off with an introduction on the overall destruction caused by Superstorm Sandy and will share information on the Valley Hospital. She will then dive into the hospital's experience using Everbridge's emergency notification system during the storm, how to utilize ENS to its full capacity. Directly after this, we will hear from Claudia Dent, VP of Product Marketing at Everbridge, on how Everbridge's solution suite can help organizations overcome hurdles and communications challenges. After the session, we will have a 15-minute question and answer session with our speakers. At this point, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers. Maureen Dettori is Director of Telecommunications and Reception Services at the Valley Hospital in Ridgewood, New Jersey. She is responsible for managing the 24/7 telecommunications operations for Valley Health System, inclusive of more than 16 sites, as well as the call center operations for the largest hospital-based physicians answering service in New Jersey. Last year, Valley's call center handled in excess of 1.2 million calls. Maureen has a Bachelor of Arts in Management and Marketing and a Master's of Science in Healthcare Management. Maureen is the Chair of Emergency Management Agency Administration's Logistics Section Communication Branch, where her responsibilities include communicating with staff and physicians for all weather emergencies and any other Code 12 status incidents. Directly after Maureen, we will be hearing from Claudia Dent, who currently serves as the Vice President of Product Marketing at Everbridge. Claudia brings many years of experience in the technology industry, including executive positions in product management, marketing, business development, and general management in companies ranging from startup to large global enterprises. We are excited to have both of our speakers with us today. As a reminder, please don't forget you can submit your questions at any time during the webinar. You may send your questions by typing in the open text field in the questions panel and sending your questions to all panelists. If time runs out before your question is asked, we will try to follow up with you after this webinar has ended. Links to the recording of the webinar and slides from today's presentation will be available on our blog within a few days of today's session. You can also look for a link to the recording for all of our webinars on everbridge.com under our resources section. If you're on Twitter, we encourage you to take a moment to follow us at Everbridge and use the webinar hashtag #Everbridge to share snippets of insight throughout our program with your followers. We'll even retweet your comments. And now I'd like to turn it over to our presenter, Maureen Dettori.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to review some of the best practices that we have put into place, which unfortunately was something that we had to do for Hurricane Sandy, and we felt that it was a wonderful system to be able to rely on Everbridge. And I'll show you how we actually utilized Everbridge during this entire process. Next slide. The Valley Hospital is a fully accredited acute care not-for-profit hospital. We're located in Bergen County, New Jersey, which is northeast corner of New Jersey, and we're about 20 minutes from Manhattan. We're a 451-bed hospital serving 440,000 people in about 32 towns and adjoining communities. We are recognized 9 times for service excellence under the J.D. Power and Associates Distinguished Hospital Program. Next slide. And according to the most recent statistics, Valley is the second busiest hospital in the state of New Jersey based on admissions. We are affiliated with the New York University School of Medicine, as well as the New York Presbyterian Healthcare System and the Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons. Next slide. And these are some of my responsibilities that you've already heard. I'm the Director of Telecom since 1987. I manage the largest hospital-based physicians answering service in New Jersey. We are a revenue-making department, which is very rare for telecom. Usually we're paying the bills for local and long distance and whatever other services we have. But fortunate enough for Valley, we're actually able to house a very large call center that accommodates about 250 of our physicians and is able to provide some revenue as well. I support over 16 sites responsible for the call center agents on a 24/7 basis, as well as technicians and administrative supervisors, and also with the reception services end of my responsibilities includes a supervisor down there as well as all of the staff and the volunteers. I have a bachelor's in management and I also have a master's in healthcare management, which I actually got December of 2011. And I'm a member of various teams, including a recent, I was always on the emergency management team, but we actually sort of did a restructuring, and now it's an agency administration, and I'm responsible for the logistics relating to communication, and that's how Everbridge comes into my responsibilities. Next slide. Okay, so now getting towards Sandy. It was basically considered the perfect storm. All the odds were against us. It was called Superstorm Sandy, Frankenstorm. We sustained winds of 105 miles per hour. It was a full moon, so there was astronomical tides, which, actually with the combination of all the other things going on just made it a lot worse. Record-setting coastal flooding, and it was very unpredictable. We had hourly updates from the weather center, and they weren't even able to sort of predict where Sandy was going to hit. So everybody was on alert. It was a low-pressure system transforming into a hybrid between a tropical storm and a nor'easter. And if anybody who's online now is from the East Coast, you know that a nor'easter, you never know if you're going to get a foot of snow or you're going to get a full-blown blizzard where you're going to be completely incapacitated. So that's pretty much where we stood. We had no idea how much damage was going to be sustained, how it would affect us as far as our utilities. Were we going to lose phone systems, electrical systems, and anything else that was going to keep us sustaining our business here at the hospital. There were record-setting floodings in New Jersey, both in Bergen County, which is where I work and live, as well as all the way down the Jersey coast. And if anybody is familiar with the Jersey coast, it's where we all go on vacation. It's got a lot of memories from our childhood, as well as things that we do with our own children. So it really hit us hard, even if we weren't affected directly by it. Just seeing the damage was devastating. And it was basically, a quote was, Hurricane Sandy was on a collision course with New Jersey. So it was really, really scary, both from a personal aspect as well as how are we going to sustain our hospital during this horrible storm. Next slide. So the major impact on New Jersey, and this is an infrared satellite image, and you can see that basically underneath that orange glow was New Jersey. The entire state was basically in danger of getting hit, and we all just sat in our chairs waiting to see what was going to happen. And this is basically what we saw for days before, and it was moving closer and closer to New Jersey, and this is when it was directly over us. Next slide. Okay, and the only advantage working in our favor was we had 5 days notice to prepare for the worst. We knew that Sandy was on the way, and we had to not only prepare for the worst, but hope for the best, but have everything in place. So for 5 days notice, I mean, usually in a hospital environment, we barely get, a 2-minute warning. But this was the only fortunate thing that we actually had working in our favor, because we were able to sort of put processes in place and look at what we had done in previous times, and then hope that we were going to be able to use it to our advantage and be able to come out of this fairly unscathed. Next slide. Okay, from pre-Sandy to post-Sandy, the role of Everbridge at Valley on a daily basis, our HORC, which is other hospitals call it bed control, it's a hospital operations resource center. They evaluate clinical staffing levels. And if they feel that there's an area, say in the intensive care unit, where they need ICU-trained nurses, they are able to actually go through creating a group or a filter that's already there. They commence sending Everbridge announcements to that particular level of clinical staff and asking them if they're available to contact staffing. And it's on a first-come, first-served basis. This used to be a process that 2 people did almost as a full-time job. Anytime there was a shortage in staffing, they would have to pick up the phone, go through a list manually, and dial people and hope to be able to get somebody to cover the shift. Now everything goes out all at once. They can launch the Everbridge announcement. It goes out to all the nurses all at one time, and whoever is able to call back gets the shift. So this is how we use it on a regular daily basis here, and that's been going on for a few years. Next slide. So the Valley Health System is actually comprised of 3 separate entities: the Valley Hospital, which is where I work; Valley Home Care, which is our visiting nurses and anyone who goes to the home to take care of patients, whether it's for physical therapy or if it's for any kind of clinical treatment. And then Valley Medical Group, it actually started as like an urgent care, a walk-in emergency type thing for minor injuries. And now it is actually also comprised of those Valley Health Medical Group sites, as well as any of the physicians' practices that we've acquired over the last year. And that continues to grow. And all of those responsibilities for telecommunications is under one Valley Health system, and that's my responsibility as well. And each of these groups has their own standards and protocols relating to alerts. So we've actually been able to provide them with the ability to go in and be a leader in Everbridge and be able to actually launch their own announcements. So that's actually helped out a lot, because we used to just send out one announcement, and it would actually cover Valley Hospital. But because we have off-site buildings that aren't clinical buildings, it would sometimes be confusing to the staff. They weren't sure if they were supposed to come to work, if they were not, where were they supposed to report. So by breaking it down and having each one of our entities responsible for their own alerts, it's actually made everything a lot clearer for the staff. Next slide. So why Everbridge? We had looked at multiple vendors. We had brought in a lot of the vendors that were used in school systems, in other hospitals, in any kind of an area where they needed to send out one message to get a lot of people the information at the same time. We had demos that were provided here at the hospital and some of our local hospitals who are involved with UASI, which is the Urban Area Security Initiative. It's for a nonprofit. There was a security grant, and we all basically voted on which vendor we felt provided the best demo. We also made the decision based on pricing, features, references, and just the reputation in the field of emergency alerts. And Everbridge basically won hands down. Next slide. So pre-Sandy to post-Sandy command center. This is how we usually control things here. Anytime there's a Code 12 situation where they need to assemble all of the right parties, we established that in the boardroom, and it was the key departments that were identified to make sure that in the event that we were either, which has happened in the past, our own island here, because we're in a very residential area, if anything happened around us, whether it was flooding or trees down, were we able to sustain our patients and our staff without having other supplies being brought in? And that's when we basically put together a list of different departments, including linen. You had to change the sheets for the patients as well as any staff that's going to be staying overnight. Did we have enough to sustain for 5 days, 6 days, or however long it would take for us to get back on our feet, including the pharmacy, dietary for food and nutrition to provide food, also water for the patients and for the employees. And we also had to prepare for the worst, which was utility failures, with our engineering department, who is responsible for making sure that our generators and all the UPSs are running, our information systems, obviously, to keep all of our data communications stable, both on a patient level as well as keeping us informed as to what was going on in the world around us with Sandy on its way, or actually here in our backyard. And telecommunications, obviously a very vital part of us communicating with all of our staff, as well as making sure that our patients are being taken care of, and for the physicians to be able to get in touch with us as well. And we also had to provide accommodations for staff to sleep on site. Were people able to sleep in their office? Did they have enough cots? Where were we going to put the staff? Where did we know who was actually here on site? So if we needed to tap into them to actually start working at a different time or whatever, or even maybe assume other responsibilities, we needed to know where everyone was. And from a safety perspective, if we had to evacuate, were we sure that we were able to get all of our employees and our patients out? So this was just one of the aspects that we actually put into place prior to Sandy ever getting here. Next slide. So obviously a #1 priority is communication, and if you have, ever send out surveys to any of your employees, that's usually the #1 concern. It's usually the area where they feel that it's lacking. So obviously during an emergency, it's the most critical aspect. So we had to establish lines of communication for our staff, our physicians, the patients, the public, and like I said, we're in a very residential area, so a lot of the local residents actually came to Valley during the power outage because they knew that we were up and running. We also had to consider a gas shortage. Were roads closed in and around the hospital, basically making us an island, like I said the last time this happened during a lot of the hurricanes. Which one of our buildings or all of the buildings off-site were closed? How are we going to contact all of the staff that work there, as well as maybe some visitors and patients who are going to come in for classes? Program cancellations. Contact the physicians to make sure that if there were any patients that could go home, that we actually established a discharge protocol. and any divert information as far as ambulances being able to come to Valley and bring patients in here for treatment. So our first point of contact, obviously, is Everbridge. It was our primary communication before, during, and after Sandy. We sent out 2 separate messages at various intervals, create hotlines for the staff and the physicians. So in the event that the cell phones weren't charged or their home lines were down because they didn't have electricity, we were able to actually establish other means for people to be able to keep in touch with Valley as far as our status during this emergency. On our internet site, we put together some critical links to the Office of Emergency Management, FEMA, American Red Cross, New Jersey Transit to see what mass transit was actually still running in and around the hospital for those employees who rely on it. 511 New Jersey, which actually provided road closures and any kind of local information as far as transportation, and just continual status postings from all of these sites so that we didn't have to worry about updating anyone about what roads were closed. This actually took care of it for us, so it was very, very helpful. And obviously internal emails that we sent out. Next slide, please. So Sandy's finally ready to hit Valley, and we think that we're ready. Within the 72 hours that we actually experienced the storm, we went back and forth between commercial power provided by our utility company and going on to generator power. So at any time, I could look up from my office into the call center, and I could tell we were on 1, 2, or 3 generators. We have legs of electrical service provided to us from different areas of the county, and off and on they were vacillating between being 100% functional to going down, and at a couple points we had both legs that were down at the same time. So it was very iffy for a long time as to how long we were going to be able to sustain power, and fortunately for us, we were able to get back onto commercial power fairly quickly. Off-site buildings unfortunately lost power for over a week. So we had, we have about 5,000 employees, and it's distributed all across the different sites. But the off-site buildings are comprised of, say, maternal fetal medicine, our in vitro areas, bariatric. We have our business office, so any kind of financial transactions were basically shut down. So we had a lot of things that we needed to consider. How are these people going to be able to be contacted? So that they didn't leave their home to come to work. So that was a concern of ours, because the timing, it's one thing if the storm hits and it's during the day, but then you have to consider, do we call people at 3 o'clock in the morning to let them know not to come to work? Do we have another place where we can reassign them so that they can continue doing the work so we don't have to worry about trying to catch up a week later? And at that point, we had no idea how long we were going to be out of service. So it was definitely like an hourly thing, waiting for public service to actually put the power back on. And unfortunately, like I said, it took over a week. And during this entire time, we had to maintain the command center. We had to make sure every department that was noted as a key department came in and reported back as to their status and what we needed to do to maintain all the levels that we had discussed previous to the storm hitting us. IS systems and telecommunications systems, thankfully, were never affected. We were able to sustain our telephone system 100%. Our call center was online with the generator and the UPS, so that we didn't even experience any kind of even a burp in the electrical service. And during that time, my call center usually averages about 27,000 calls a week. That's like an average week. And we were actually handling over 49,000 calls. So it's every department, whether it was clinical or non-clinical, had some piece in the puzzle where their job responsibility was drastically altered during this entire event. Next slide. Okay, and we didn't even really think about this until it actually happened. As electrical power was lost, obviously gas stations were closed. So everybody was scrambling around trying to fill up their tank. Everybody wanted to make sure that they weren't stuck with a quarter tank of gas, because we had no idea when power was going to be restored, when were gas stations going to be open to be able to give us a full tank. And then they started the odd and even system, so that if you had a license plate with an odd number on it, you were thinking, I can't get gas for 2 more days, and you almost started to become greedy because you had to get gas. People were going miles and miles away, sometimes almost an hour away, because they heard a gas station was open. And then for the gas stations that actually were able to sustain electrical power, they started to run out of gas, and the roads were impassable, so fuel trucks couldn't get to their station to deliver the gas, so they consequently closed down as well. So Valley was able to establish an agreement. If you could just back up. They were actually able to establish an agreement with a local gas station that was providing diesel fuel for our emergency vehicles and for some of the nurses as well. So it was a struggle for clinical and non-clinical staff to get to the hospital. People may get here, but they're not able to get home because they don't have enough gas to fill up the tank. There were other people that were stuck at home and weren't able to come in, and that's where Everbridge came into place too, because now we had to start calling in people who could possibly come in to cover for those that were basically unable to get here because they just didn't have the fuel to get themselves here. And these are actual pictures of people pushing their vehicles into gas stations. And these lines are like nothing. But then you see the other people with the gas cans. They didn't even have any gas left, whether they're filling it up for their little small generators at home, or they were actually bringing these to fill up part of their tank just to get them out of their driveway or wherever their car may have broken down. Next slide. So the way we handled everything, we had a debriefing. We would continue meeting every 2 hours to update status. Sometimes status wouldn't change, but we needed to know that. And we needed to make sure that we were all aware of the other departments and the status within, par levels and things like that. So each department was responsible every 2 hours to make sure, and this went 24 hours a day. It wasn't just during the daytime hours. This went 12 o'clock, 2 a.m., 4 a.m. We just kept going all around the clock until we were off alert. So every department it was mandatory to send at least one representative from each department or unit. Nursing was represented as well as all of the other areas, just to make sure that we knew that we had enough clinical staffing. And the Everbridge alert went out every 2 hours to staff. A lot of people may have been annoyed by it, but we just felt that it was necessary just to keep everyone updated. If changes were noted, we would send it out. If we felt nothing had changed, then we didn't feel that there was a need to send out a duplication. And each message, we learned later on, a lot of people who lost power and their answering machines weren't able to pick up the call or they weren't able to access it, they said that they weren't quite sure when the message had come in. So after we heard that, we started to say, you know what, it's a good idea. Every time we send out an Everbridge going forward in the future, everything has to be dated and timed so everyone knows the sequence of events that occurred. Next slide. So this is, even though it's lengthy, this is an actual Everbridge alert message. And we sent it out both on telephones as an automated message, voice message, as well as emails, texting, whatever priority or preference our employees and physicians preferred. And for the most part, we sent this information out to the employees. Physicians, we are not a teaching hospital, and physicians really didn't need to know as often as the employees did. So we basically informed them here, if you look at the message, that power to Valley is fully restored. And if you were scheduled, you needed to work, I needed to come on site. And the shuttle service, which actually transports some of our new employees back and forth between one of the sites, they wanted to make sure that they knew it was fully restored so they could park off-site. And then also the second paragraph basically tells you that our off-site locations are still down, and that in order for them to get paid, they needed to know, what they needed to put in as far as payroll, paid time off, and that in the event that there were other people in their department that they knew did not have access to this information, to please make ssure that they kept in touch with them. And if you look there, I added we have an 8411 number, and that's basically an announcement that I continually update. It's just a recording, and we just provide emergency status just so that if anyone doesn't have an opportunity to receive the Everbridge for some reason due to power, they were still able to call into this message and be able to be updated. Next slide. Okay, so post-Sandy, we were able to solicit a lot of comments from staff. We actually wanted to hear from them. We wanted to know how they felt about the way Valley handled our communications during the hurricane. So we have set up an emergency management agency administration team, and it consists of the incident command. So that's responsible for the ongoing training for all of the staff and making sure that we maintain changes as we go forward that are going to benefit us. The operations section, which basically takes care of staffing requirements. Do we need to create what's called a pop-up area? So if we're being deluged in the ED, is there another area for us to actually place patients that have been admitted but aren't able to get into their room right away? And the logistics section, communications, obviously, to maintain the Everbridge database, establish alert standards, and any kind of requirements that we need to make sure that that system is working the way we need it to. And then the finance and administration area, we have to identify expenses relating to the disaster, and our risk management department takes care of that. And they record the costs associated with the damage that may have been costing us, as well as any kind of staffing issues or overtime and things like that. We've developed annual goals and objectives, and we want to make sure that we establish all of the concerns and comments and recommendations and any of the debriefing notes from the hurricane to use as a way to continually improve what we provide. Next slide. So basically, best practices. We sort of learned from all of our experiences that you need to identify the key departments, both clinical and non-clinical. Who needs to be involved? Who can represent maybe 2 different areas instead of having 100 people there? We did have a very, very full boardroom, but we felt that that was better than not having enough. Establish PAR levels. How long can you sustain the hospital and the patients and the employees, say, for the next week? Are you able to do that? Is there a way for you to get emergency supplies in here? If so, do it ahead of time, to sort of anticipate the worst. Identify and create a command center, one local place, as well as a status of meeting schedules so that everyone knows exactly what time they need to be where, and they just actually have it as part of their regular schedule during this Code 12. Next slide, please. And additional best practices. Create some kind of a template for your Everbridge announcements so that when it's time to send out, like a weather emergency, we send that out all the time because we have certain policies that come into play for when the shifts have to be arriving and how much lead time we give them. Make sure you coordinate something so you don't have to record it every time, that you have a weather emergency template, and all you have to do is basically put in the date and you let it fly. This is very, very helpful because if you live on the East Coast, you never know when you're going to have to use it. And we've used it many times before. And provide the staff with an Everbridge alert caller ID. What we did is we established one DID number, and at all of our management functions as well as any of our publications that go out to employees, especially right before the winter, we always tell them to make sure, please put this 10-digit number in your cell phone as a contact, so when it comes up, you're going to be aware that it's an emergency announcement from Valley. And we always side on the side of too much information very frequently than not enough. You're always worried about bothering people with information, but to tell you the truth, this is the first time that we actually felt that we were providing information on such a consistent basis, and that, yes, some people didn't like receiving it as much, but it definitely was very, very beneficial as far as the final outcome and how well we survived during this emergency. Next slide. These are just some of the pictures that are about an hour away down at the Jersey Shore. These are homes that people obviously waited their whole life to get. They retire, and this is what happened. In a matter of hours, there was this complete devastation. Next slide. Next slide. And this was actually local. So trees were coming down. I had a tree fall on my husband's car. I had wires pulled off the side of our house, but we got out of it very, very, very little damage compared to some of these other people that lost absolutely everything. And there are actually people within my own department who lost everything. So next slide. So that's it. Our next upcoming project between Valley and Everbridge, because of the way Everbridge has actually proven to be such a great resource to us. This was actually part of my master's capstone program, and we were looking at different ways to provide more consistency and streamlined processes. So a lot of people make appointments in outpatient departments, the lab, diagnostic imaging, and they either forget to show up or they had forgotten to cancel. So we are going to be able to send out any kind of a reminder that we want as far as types, whether it's an email, a text, or a phone call, to the different patients for outpatient. We're actually gearing up to 1,000 a day once we get all of our outpatient departments online. And using the Everbridge Broadcast API, we're going to be sending them a daily interface from Meditech, which is our medical information technology system, for all patients that are scheduled for any kind of a procedure. And using diagnostic imaging just for 1 year and the no-shows that never rescheduled, we realized that we probably lost over $200,000 in revenue. And if we're able to get these no-shows or people who are going to become late for appointments to sort of get back online, it will actually counter all of the lost revenue and lost productivity that you can experience from a no-show or someone coming late. So that's our next project. We just got approval from it, and I will be working with Evan McNamara from Everbridge and moving this forward. So hopefully we're going to have this online within the next couple of months. Next slide. And that's it. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your attendance, and I'll turn it over to Claudia.
Thank you, Maureen. That was an excellent example of how Valley Hospital was able to use Everbridge under your leadership. And during the course of the next 15 minutes, I'd like to spend some time talking about Hurricane Sandy and our solution, and just give everyone a flavor for the kind of technology that supports efforts like Valley Hospital. So let's look at Hurricane Sandy by the numbers. During the course of Hurricane Sandy, Everbridge sent over 10 million notifications. This was not only during the storm itself, but before and after. 23% of those notifications were sent specifically during the storm itself, which really means that many people were leveraging Everbridge not only to manage when the storm hit, but to really take the time to prepare carefully and manage the aftermath as well. This number of notifications was about a 156% increase over Hurricane Irene. And it's also important to note that during the course leading up to Hurricane Sandy, we had a 31% increase in our citizen opt-in membership. So not only does Everbridge serve employees of organizations like Valley Hospital and corporations, et cetera, but we also serve state and local government and citizens as well. So these are just some statistics from Hurricane Sandy. So just as a background, Everbridge was founded in 2002. So we have over 10 years of experience helping customers manage emergencies like Hurricane Sandy. And we've developed over this time period a set of best practices that we've really been able to automate in our solution. We have over 1,500 customers, and we serve over 30 million individuals with our system. So just to take a tour of the solution itself, we do offer a suite of products. The main product that Maureen was talking about is our emergency mass notification system. This enables you to send and manage notifications across all different geographies and enterprises. We also provide a solution called Matrix, which enables you to manage incidents with different automated rules so you can communicate for more operational efficiency. We also support interactive visibility, which enables you during the course of an emergency to really maximize any situational intelligence that you may need to affect the impact of these various different emergencies and get the maximum understanding through social media, mobile, and weather. And finally, we leverage mobile technologies to provide two-way communication between mobile managers who may be in the command center and members who may be located any place around the world closer to a disaster or emergency. And this rests on our Everbridge platform, which provides our elastic infrastructure, redundancy, our open APIs that Maureen talked about, the broadcast APIs, our reporting, et cetera. So let's take a step back and talk about some of the communication challenges that you may experience during the course of an emergency. Anytime there's an emergency and you have to act under pressure, you're always increasing the possibility of some kind of an error. You also have to ensure that you have the right contacts, that you're just relying on one system and not multiple systems for communication, and that you have well-defined processes, et cetera. These are some of the challenges around trying to deliver notifications during the course of an emergency. On the flip side, there's also the challenges around making sure that your responders have actually received your messages and notifications. Can you really prove that the right teams and personnel have been notified? Are the messages clear and complete? Have you reached anyone? Will it survive an audit? You know, all of those challenges exist. So from an Everbridge perspective, we want to enable you to have the ability to deliver smart messages or notifications by combining both speed and intelligence. And we'll talk a lot about this in the next few slides. But this is really about maximizing your efficiency and bringing you the most situational awareness possible. Likewise, we want to ensure that you know that your notifications have been received through an assured response, that you target individuals and not just phones or email, etc., that you get a contact confirmation, that you can leverage richer communication through mobile technologies. And of course, you know, all of this rests upon a trusted platform that includes redundancy. And when we talk about redundancy at Everbridge, we really mean it in a multidimensional way. So redundancy not only means the fact that we have a redundant data centers and infrastructure so that we can survive any kind of catastrophe, et cetera, and that we have an elastic infrastructure, but it also means that we provide you redundant vehicles to reach out to your constituents, and that we provide you multiple ways to connect to different individuals, whether that's their mobile phone, landline, email, etc. So let's take a deeper look into the Everbridge solution. We talked about automation and speed being key, and Maureen talked about this as well. You know, sometimes you have time to prepare for an emergency, as Maureen talked about. And in this situation, Everbridge enables you to really build up a library of predetermined message templates and contact lists. This enables you to really reduce errors during the course of an event and enables you to prepare as fully as possible. But sometimes you don't always have the time to prepare. So we still enable you to easily, very quickly, create notifications on the fly with a single-page notification process. So this enables you to, really maximize your speed under any kind of circumstance. But it's really important, and I think Maureen mentioned this as well, that you take the time to prepare as much as possible so that you have a set of scenarios ready to go under any kind of an event such as Hurricane Sandy. In addition to providing forms and templates, we also enable you to send notifications leveraging our interactive visibility solution. So you've often heard that a picture paints 1,000 words, and it's the same with emergency notifications, that it's a lot easier to actually visualize the impacted area and interactively through the map send a notification. So we enable you to increase your accuracy using a zip code, street addresses, different shapes, whether it's a circle, a polygon, a custom shape, etc. In addition to that, we also integrate our interactive visibility solution with weather alerts. And we provide over 100 different kinds of weather alerts, including thunderstorms, lightning, hail, etc. And let's drill into a specific example. This screenshot was actually taken before Hurricane Sandy. And you can see that in interactive visibility, there are high wind warnings that have been issued. And the map on the right represents where that high wind was supposed to have the most impact. So you'll notice that the red dots represent contacts, and the light purple shaded areas represent the areas of impact for that particular weather event. So this enables you interactively to select contacts based on those weather shapes. And you can either do that automatically, so that whenever an alert occurs, you automatically send a notification to various, whether it's employees or emergency staff or citizens, or you can do it through the map itself by selecting those polygons and launching a notification at any point in time. So we really provide this flexibility in terms of managing and understanding how weather is going to impact the specific geographies that you're interested in. So let's talk a little bit about social media. One of the key things is during an emergency, you want to be able to maximize your situational intelligence and awareness. And there's a wealth of information out there that's coming from social media. The biggest challenge around it is, though, how do you harness that? Who has time to monitor all the Twitter feeds? In mid-2012, Twitter cited 400 million tweets per day, with the highest growth being in mobile tweets. So what interactive visibility enables you to do is harness what's most important to you through intelligent filters. So you only see those tweets that are important to a particular situation. So where you see the different gold-colored pins, those are actually mobile tweets of people on the ground who are commenting on various aspects of Hurricane Sandy. And in this situation, you also get pictures from the ground. So this goes back to Maureen's dilemma, where all the gas stations were starting to close and people were really waiting in line to try and get gas. And having some situational awareness of where this is happening can be really enhanced by leveraging something like Twitter. Also, even in the aftermath of Sandy, it was very difficult for everyone to reach various constituents, et cetera, just because of all the damage that was done. So social media is another way to start to get a handle on situational awareness. So this is another example of someone taking a picture of, down power lines and scary situations, et cetera. So this is a way to really leverage information that's out there. You may also want to leverage information from your staff right from the ground. You may have employees in those neighborhoods, et cetera. And with Everbridge, we enable you to communicate with your employees through our mobile member application. And you'll notice on the map on the right-hand side, there are blue pins and green pins. The blue pins are coming from social media, and the green pins are coming from employees or staff members or citizens who are reporting on a particular fire. And this gives you a direct line to people on the ground from the command center itself, and enables you to have some rich two-way communication with photos. You can also understand the safety status of people, et cetera. Now, one of the things that we talked about earlier was this notion of a redundancy in terms of different ways to deliver notifications. Well, in Maureen's situation, they had time to prepare for Hurricane Sandy, and they set up a command center, and they had a lot of backup plans, et cetera. But sometimes emergencies strike with no preparation time whatsoever. And you may not even be in the office. You may not even have access to a computer. And if you're managing that emergency, you want to be able to have an alternative way. So with our mobile manager solution, you can actually manage and monitor communications wherever you are, using the same kind of templates that you've planned, or building new messages. And the other key element here is that you can actually also leverage the map to send messages to designated contacts. So you have that same rich experience from your mobile device that we provide in our manager portal. So that's the whole side of actual delivering messages and all the different ways in which we enable you to reach out to your constituents. Now let's talk about how you ensure that you actually get the response. And the key element here is targeting the individual. And one of the key things that Maureen said in their communications plan is that they used whatever they could, and they leveraged the preferences of whatever their physicians or nurses wanted. And this is a key part of the Everbridge solution so that you can be assured that you have multiple pathways to reach an individual. One key little factoid here is that during Hurricane Sandy, Everbridge sent 10 million notifications. I mentioned that earlier. 10% of them were SMS, and 20% of them were email. That's a large percentage still leveraging phones. So I think everyone needs to be cognizant that sometimes during the course of an emergency like Hurricane Sandy, phone lines aren't available with various power outages and landlines down, etc. So having these alternative backups is critical. So this is the way that you really get an assured response. Each person in your contact database has preferred personal preferences on how they want to receive messages. So you can see that Alan, Sue, Dave, Phil, they all have various different methods of receiving messages and notifications. Everbridge makes a first attempt and waits to get confirmation and then moves on to a second attempt. So during the second attempt, anyone that didn't confirm the first time gets reached out to. And then, of course, we do the third attempt. And by the third attempt, if there's no response, or fourth, you can do as many attempts as you want. You have the choice then to actually resend. So basically, you can keep going after people until you get a specific response from them. And Maureen mentioned this in terms of really trying to be diligent in terms of reaching out to people. The benefit here is that you have an audit trail of everyone who you sent a notification to, when they confirmed, what delivery path they confirmed on, whether it was a phone, email, and who didn't confirm. So you can start to get an understanding of who might be in danger, where there might be problem areas, etc. A key thing also is our mobile member application. One of the interesting things is that not only do we provide the ability of confirmations and polling messages, etc., but we also provide a rich two-way mobile communications. So this enables your staff members to respond to your outbound messages, but they can also send unsolicited messages to you about things you may not be aware of. So for example, if there's a fire someplace and you're not really aware of that in your command center, one of your staff members can send you a picture of it so that you really have a sense of what's happening on the ground. And likewise, you can get information from people, much more specific, in terms of, their safety, where they actually are, etc. I talked earlier about being able to get real-time status reporting on who's confirming, how they're confirming, and this is all, these charts and graphs all unfold during the course of the notification process. But of course, you can always go back afterwards and run more detailed reports to assess your performance. One of the key things that Maureen mentioned was that they put in place a study afterwards to find out how they could improve their processes from Hurricane Sandy. And this is really critical because as you understand and report on your performance, you can make some process improvements. You can set goals and metrics to track and measure your success in terms of reaching people and executing notifications during emergency situations. So that was a real quick tour of the Everbridge solution. Obviously there's many more capabilities that I didn't get a chance to cover today, but I did want to touch upon the highlights. I think the key thing is that our customers speak for our solution, just like Maureen. We have demonstrated value for customers across many different verticals, state and local governments, corporations, hospitals, et cetera, all have found value out of the Everbridge solution. We have been the leader from a Gartner perspective in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and we really have some unique capabilities that enable people like Maureen and Valley Hospital to execute and maximize efficiency during the course of a situation like Hurricane Sandy, and make the best of what was really a devastating situation. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for attending the webinar today, and I want to especially thank Maureen for her insight, into what happened during the course of Hurricane Sandy in New Jersey, which we know was so, was such a difficult environment.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you, Claudia, and thank you, Maureen. At this point, we are going to open it up to questions from our audience. As a reminder, you may submit your questions by typing a question into the open text field in the questions panel on your screen and submitting to all panelists. We will try to get to as many questions as we can. Our first question, I think this one's for Claudia. How does Everbridge determine what Twitter posts to show and which not to show? I think this is referring to the interactive visibility portion.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we provide a filtering capability for the Twitter, for Twitter feeds, which enable you to select keywords, hashtags, geography, or any combination of those things. So for Hurricane Sandy, there were specific hashtags that were put in place. You could search, for example, Hurricane Sandy, hashtag Hurricane Sandy, and then a certain geography or radius. You could do things if you're in emergency management. You may want to understand in a certain location where fires are happening. So you might have a keyword of fire. So it's very flexible. You can create more than one of these kinds of filters. You can create them so that you're looking at them all the time and that notifications are triggered to you under certain circumstances. And you can also, build a filter on the fly in the event of an emergency that crops up.
Great. The second question is for Maureen at Valley Hospital. This question is for Valley Hospital. How do you differentiate a notification regarding a disaster than those daily notifications that are sent looking for available nurses?
Based on the caller ID that actually comes from the Everbridge that's sent from what I called the HORC before, the Operations Resource Center, going with staffing, it'll actually give the staffing DID number so that if the employee sees it coming across, they are aware that this one came from staffing versus the emergency alert that I send out from a different DID.
Great. I guess the next question is back to Claudia. Can you elaborate on the other communication options that are available within the system to communicate with employees?
Yeah, so we have a number of different delivery paths. You can, and you can have multiple phone landlines that you can identify. So if you want to identify home phone, work phone, you can identify more than one. Mobile phone, SMS, email, pagers, fax. There is, I'm probably, there's a number of different pager technologies that we support. We support, other vehicles as well if you want to use things like desktop alerts, et cetera. We have a very open environment where virtually any kind of communication path out there, we can reach.
Actually, there's another question that's a great follow-on. It says, it seems that there are very large alert messages. How does that work with text on cell phones? It seems like they would be broken up into many different messages.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and depending upon your delivery path, we would recommend structuring your messages in different ways so that you wouldn't actually have that the breakup of the message itself. So it really depends upon the circumstance and what needs to be communicated and what paths you're leveraging.
Moving back to Maureen, how did you collect the phone numbers that you put into the system, and how do you maintain a current database as employees change?
Human Resources actually interfaced with the Everbridge system, so we were able to originally upload everything. And anytime there's any kind of notices of separation where an employee is no longer going to be working here, or we have new employees, they're actually asked to complete the information. We have them set up all of their, obviously all the standard information is uploaded from Human Resources, but if they have any preference as to, which method that they want versus, just going with our standard cell phone, home phone, things like that, they're able to actually either speak with their manager or they can speak with me directly, and they can actually go in and make these changes that are uploaded.
Great. And sort of related to that question, we have another. It sounds like there are some additional processes for setting up the system, but overall, are there any costs or time savings by using the system instead of a manual process for communication? This is for Maureen.
For me?
Yes.
Maureen. Actually, we've been able to reallocate the staff that uses it on a daily basis. They're now able to do a lot more structured things than before. They were actually responsible for just making and receiving phone calls. So in order for them to be able to, really maximize their efficiency, that's when Everbridge came into play, and they use it every day. And now they really don't know what they would do without it, because it's able to take so much manual work off of them and be able to use them in other areas, especially when the hospital is on a high census like now during flu season.
Yeah, and I'd like to add one thing to that as well. I think it's important to note that the Everbridge solution is software as a service. We don't say that explicitly, but that means that you have no components, or there's nothing that you have to install on site. It's all managed for you as a service. So getting up and running is, is a very, rapid process. And it's within a matter of a few days that you can have contacts all uploaded and the system working, et cetera.
And if I could just add one more thing, we had looked at other vendors originally, and a lot of them would actually require us using our own phone lines and our data lines as well to actually process these calls. When Everbridge actually provides this, we didn't have to do anything as far as expanding any of our voice or data communications.
Yeah, and that's another great point, Maureen, because if you have an emergency, you don't want to rely on your own phone lines if your power is down, et cetera. So it goes again to the notion of redundancy on multiple dimensions.
Great. One more question about the functionality of the system. I think this would go to Claudia. Are home phone and work phone notifications sent as a voice message? If so, is it recorded by the system, or does the user record their own message? How does the landline confirm a message?
Yep, so that's an excellent question. So basically, when you leverage phone, either landline or mobile for that matter, you have two options. You can record a message. You can pre-record the message and send it out, or we do have a text-to-speech translation. And then when that message is delivered, basically the individual presses 1 to confirm, and that's what we pick up that you've actually heard the message, et cetera.
Great. Well, I'm very sorry to announce, but we have run out of time for the webinar today. Thank you, Maureen and Claudia, for a great session, and to all of our attendees who are able to join us today. If you missed any part of the webinar, be sure to look for the slides on our blog within the next few days. And you should be receiving an email with a link to the recording in the coming days as well. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to follow us on Twitter @Everbridge and join our group on LinkedIn, Everbridge Incident Management and Emergency Notification Professionals, where we have regular discussions about topics such as these. For those of you who are interested in seeing a demo of the new Everbridge system, please visit everbridge.com/contact us to request a demo. Thank you all again for your participation in today's presentation. learning from Hurricane Sandy, best practices for mass notification and weather emergencies. We hope to see you online again soon. Have a great day.